So.
Well, it was a last minute email for a last minute situation. So thank you for letting me come in late.
Not a problem at all. Francine, good to see you. Okay, it looks like we are all here. We will get started. This is the time and place for the Nevada Tax Commission, July 26th, 2022. The time is 3:30. Tina, could you call roll, please?
Commissioner Lippman,
Present.
Commissioner Bursey,
Here.
Commissioner Rotifer,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Present.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Byram,
I'm here.
Commissioner Witt,
Here.
and Chairman Wren.
Present. Thank you. A call for public comment. First, I'll ask, is there any public comment in Carson City?
There's no public comment in Carson City.
Okay, is there any public comment in, well, we're not in Las Vegas. So if you're on the telephone, please dial star nine to be placed in the queue, or raise your hand.
I don't see any public comment.
Okay, seeing no public comment, Director Hughes, if you would give those, please.
Yes, for all of you that plan on testifying today, please raise your right hand. And by testifying today, you swear to tell the truth.
Got a couple positive nods there. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Director Hughes, the first item.
The first item on the agenda is the consent calendar. It's agenda item 2. 2A is consideration for approval of the recommended settlement agreements and stipulations. Under this agenda item 1 is settlement agreement resolving the following matters: ACC Enterprises, LLC, for State of Nevada Department of Taxation, District Court Case Number A19786888-J, pending in the 8th Judicial District. ACC Enterprises, LLC, First Department of Taxation, Case Number 512940, Petition to Audit Deficiency. N Cannabis Compliance Board versus ACC Enterprises, C130, RC130, CCB, Case Number 2022-97, CCB Regulatory Matter. for possible action.
Okay, thank you very much. Since that's the only thing on our calendar, I'm going to pull that from the consent calendar so we can discuss it as need be. I'm looking at the faces. Who's going to start here? Mr. Pope?
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a global settlement agreement that the parties worked hard on for several months. It resolves 3 cases that are mentioned in the agenda item. And, as your attorneys were recommending the settlement agreement in accordance with the settlement agreement. And if you have any questions, there's 3 of us here who can field those questions, and we'll send them to the person that we think is better able to answer your question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Byram.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
I would be interested in having just a brief overview of the agreement by the Attorney General's office, maybe the thoughts of the other party as well.
Okay,
Commissioner Lippman, just in addition to that, thank you, Commissioner Byram. I'm hoping, I just want to know, is the taxpayer present? Or taxpayers present?
or representative?
We
Yes,
do have.
good afternoon.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Sorry, John.
Go ahead.
We have the Receivers Counsel, Mr. Savage, and we also have counsel for the purchaser, Mr. Mack, are both present.
Okay, well, welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, so Commissioner Byram has asked for kind of an overview. Who wants to give that? Natasha?
Yes, I can give that. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chairman. So I will focus on the tax portions, and then we can, if the commission also has CCB questions, we can field those as well. As far as the tax, as the agenda states, there are a few matters that are being settled here. So first we have what the taxpayer has labeled undisputed tax liability. It appears on page 3 of 24 in the settlement agreement. That undisputed tax liability was originally started as $411,346, just about. The taxpayer has been making timely payments as to that payment plan, so it has significantly gone down since they've entered into this payment plan. This new global settlement agreement would result in a brand new payment plan, $12,500 per month over the course of 36 months. The taxpayer understands and agrees that it needs to execute new guarantees as well as submit financials due to the payment plan. The next liability that this kind of resolves is the audit case. The taxpayer characterizes that as the disputed tax liability because they are appealing. That amount in tax is about $503,275 plus penalties and interest. This global settlement agreement would resolve that audit case as well. There was some outstanding modified business tax for 2020 through 2021 that this will also resolve. And importantly, it will resolve the 8th Judicial District Court case pending currently against the department by ACC, and it would be dismissed with prejudice in the event that this settlement agreement is approved by this commission. As far as the CCB, I can tell you generally that this morning, based on the settlement agreement, the agreement is that they take a category 2 violation, one of them, one category 3 violation, and 3 Category 5 violations. And those Category 5 violations were for failure to pay tax. And there was a plan of correction there as well that's contained in the settlement agreement. It's paragraph 36, I believe. And I think Chris can probably field questions as to CCB violations better than I can. But that is the gist of kind of what happened this morning as to CCB. I think if you have any other questions as to where specifically I can give more detail, that would be great.
I just add, Natasha, that the CCB, after the admissions of the violations, there was on top of that a $50,000 civil penalty that will be paid according to this settlement agreement.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, the civil penalty, $50,000, which will be paid in a lump sum.
Natasha, this is Jeff Road. Either a question for you or Chris. And this is mostly out of personal interest, and I do like the fact that it's included in the settlement agreement, and that's provision 36 regarding a plan of correction that was approved by the cannabis board staff. Can you just briefly summarize what that plan of correction is, so we ensure that there's going to be compliance going forward?
Sure,
Thank you, Commissioner Rose. Chris, if you can field that question, I believe you'll have better details.
Yeah, so we had, every time we settle a case, we do have the licensee submit a plan of correction to the CCB so that we can be reassured that the issues don't reoccur in the future. For the CCB violations specific to cannabis, they have redone their standard operating procedures, updated policies and procedures to make sure they track and tag plants properly. As to the payment of taxes, ACC's prior bookkeeper was released and a new bookkeeper was retained. They have policies and procedures in place to make sure the bookkeeper and the general manager will be jointly responsible for ensuring compliance with tax reporting and deadlines and instituting calendar reminders. The general managers to update the accounts payable account weekly regarding monthly sales to ensure funds are ready and available to pay taxes. And that pretty much covers the corrective actions on the tax end. I mean, the licensee can address that with you in further detail if you need further detail than that.
And I assume that if there's future violations in this area, there's probably going to be a lot less patience for it, since it's going to be a reoccurring violation.
Correct. And our regulations allow us to take that into consideration. The regulations of the CCP also provide for progressive discipline. Whereas if you have the 3rd or 4th violation within 3 years, the penalties keep going higher and higher.
Right. Thank you.
If I may add, this is Stephen Mack. Thank you on behalf of Strata Growth, which is the new owner. So going forward, it's not the ACC will not be the taxpayer anymore. It's a brand new entity, a brand new owner, and which has purchased the assets of the old ACC. So I want to be clear that the new owner going forward is taking the liability as far as the payments go, and have agreed to make the payments. However, it is a new entity, so the new entity has no history as far as any tax violations or payment violations or any other violations, actually, for that matter. My client has been in control of the management for last couple months, and I think even since the receiver has been there, there hasn't been any issues at all with regard to the tax payments.
I guess follow-up question, Mr. Mack or Mr. Rapp. Since this is going to be a new licensee there, if these types of compliance issues were to come up with the new licensee, how's that going to be treated? Is it going to be treated as first-time violations with this licensee, or are they going to be somewhat on notice because of this agreement.
They're on notice because of the agreement, and our position is that the penalties and the violations obviously follow the license rather than the owner.
Yep.
But, I mean, there may be some consideration that they're new owners. It just depends on what the violation is, how bad it is, how soon it occurs. We take all those into account.
Thank you, Chris. Well, yeah, we're not expecting any issues, obviously. We've got a lot new, like Chris said, we have a lot of new controls and new persons that are there that we believe are a little more accountable than the past. And so hopefully we won't have any issues.
Mr. Mack, it's Commissioner Lippman. So I understand that it's a new entity, but are there new individual owners that are shareholders or members or whatever the entity is?
Right. So the answer is yes and no. So the reason it's yes and no is because there is a sole owner now, and it's Darren Kessler. Darren Kessler was an original investor in ACC and put up the original money, he and his family. However, they were not listed as owners. They had no participation in the company. There's a lot of issues that existed at that time. And they, in fact, were excluded from the company or being able to even have any input whatsoever. The death of Howard helped clear a lot of those issues, which is it's been a long, arduous road, but we've gotten to where we're at now with a lot of time, a lot of patience, and a lot of money.
And good afternoon. This is John Savage, counsel for the receiver, appointed over ACC Enterprises. And just to follow up on Mr. Mack's comments and give the commission a little more background, Howard Misley was the only individual licensed as licensee for ACC's cannabis licenses. And he passed away in July of 2021. And going back a year further is actually when this original payment plan went into effect in August of 2022 due to pre-receivership tax liability. Once Mr. Misley passed away in July of 2021, the Cannabis Compliance Board held an emergency meeting because there was no other individuals licensed to be responsible for these cannabis licenses, and appointed Mr. Leonard as approved Mr. Leonard's qualifications to be appointed as the cannabis receiver, and then the Judicial District Court subsequently appointed him as receiver pursuant to a court order in August of 2021. And in reviewing all the documents and talking to people who were involved, the receiver did confirm that Mr. Misley was the sole manager and did solely manage the operation to the exclusion of all other investors, including Mr. Kessler. And so Mr. Kessler was not involved in any of the prior management that resulted in these accrued tax liabilities or any of the regulatory violations. That all happened while Mr. Misley was the sole manager. Since the receiver was appointed, we have been able to maintain current status on the payment plan, thanks in part to Strata Growth taking over as manager and helping out with some of the shortfall on paying some of those expenses. And so we have worked closely with the Cannabis Compliance Board and also the Department of Tax in getting these issues resolved. And maybe the one point of further clarification and background I'd just like to add on what was characterized as the disputed tax liability that is currently subject to challenge in the administrative action. A lot of those unpaid taxes were related to cannabis, raw cannabis that ACC provided to other licensed manufacturers pursuant to a joint venture agreement. whereby they did not receive payment for the product at the time of the transfer and were supposed to be paid at the time of the sale of the final product. And these are other disputes, but ACC did not ultimately receive full payment, or in some case, no payment for that cannabis, which is why money was not available to pay for at least a large portion of these the disputed tax liability. And I think the one point of this settlement that maybe hasn't been elaborated on further is the settlement of the civil litigation. Adam Fulton has been litigation counsel and is on the call as well for ACC. This is related to ACC's lost opportunity to obtain a retail license, a retail cannabis license at the time the Nevada Department of Taxation was enforcing the cannabis regulation. And if there's any questions about that lawsuit, I think Mr. Fulton would be the best person to answer those questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, this
Yep.
Commissioner Byram, I have a quick question for Mr. Savage.
Go ahead.
So the disputed sales tax or the disputed tax amounts are going to continue to be protested after this resolution, or is this part of, we're settling it all with prejudice? So does that stop now and we just move forward, or are you going to continue to protest administratively any of the tax matters?
No, this settlement will resolve that tax dispute, and the $450,000 payment plan will include part of that disputed tax liability. Credit Growth will be assuming that tax liability and making the payments going forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I believe, assuming that the commission approves the settlement agreement as of today, Strata Growth will be then the owner of the company going forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Lippman?
So the last comment made about the Receivers Council made about that this also settles litigation that's going on between ACC and the Department of Tax regarding a license dispute. So is that dismissed with prejudice as well?
Yes,
Natasha,
Commissioner Lippman.
go ahead. Sorry.
That is correct.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to answer yes. The settlement agreement does stipulate that it will be dismissal with prejudice.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
And then I would assume, Natasha, with regard to the new payment plan, between the personal guarantees and the liens, we feel comfortable from the state standpoint that that tax liability is secure.
Yes, the new taxpayer strata does understand and agrees that they will execute the guarantees that we need, as well as submitting financials in order to be approved for that $12,500 a month payment plan. And as just generally dealing with this case now for a year and a half, I would say, I don't expect that they would want, especially since they've been helping make the old payment plan payments. And I've seen that this company came in and kind of wanted to continue operating this business. They are the largest employer in Nye County, and they did consider that when they were ready to shut down this business, and when there just wasn't a lot of money, and that was before Strata came in. So I do expect there to be compliance all around from Strata, if that's worth anything to the commissioners.
And this is John Savage on behalf of the receiver. If I may follow up on Natasha's comments. The receiver did actually file a motion with the receivership court to cease operations of ACC because it discovered that the company was insolvent after a period of time. We were trying to resolve some internal ownership disputes and then realized that there was more debt than the receiver knew upon his appointment, and it really was an insurmountable amount of debt. And in order to keep the business operating, Strata did agree to come in as the manager and cover that shortfall pending this asset sale and transfer of the license. And so as part of the agreement, we will, Strata, assuming state tax liability and paying for federal tax liability, which is significant. And so I believe over $500,000 in accrued federal taxes, and total debt for the company is expected to be multi-million dollars in debt. And so ACC is insolvent, but Strata has helped keep the doors open and is going to continue making these state tax payments after the transfer.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Commissioner Byram, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the parties working together to resolve this. It's complicated, and I think they did a great job and came up with a fair agreement. And with that, I would move to approve this stipulation order with ACC Enterprises LLC, etc.
Commissioner Lippman seconds the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. And I agree. Thank you very much for your work. Our next meeting is going to be August 15th, 2022. We'll be in Reno and someplace in Las Vegas, I guess. And then hopefully the next meeting we can all be together. Tina, public comment?
Stephen Mack, just on behalf of the Strata Growth, we thank you very much for everyone's effort on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mack.
If anybody has public comment, please raise your hand or dial *9. I don't see any public comment.
Okay, seeing no public comment, thank you, everybody, for your time, and thank you for your efforts. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Commissioner.